Today we'll be talking about typography, typography fonts, function, best practices of typefaces, and the likes. But to start with, what is typography? Typography is actually the use of text in designs. It's generally the use of text in design. So it's used as you all know that text are used to communicate information, is to communicate in a particular design. We can communicate with pictures, images, and all of that, but text is a direct means of communicating information. So now, there are few terms in typography that will touch this particular section of the tutorial. First, I will start with a typeface. A typeface is a set of alphabetical characters, numbers, and other characters that all have the same design. So now what I'm trying to say is, we have fonts like we have um we have fonts like Times New Roman, as the layman normally call it. It's okay, give me font, give me font, give me font, give me font. So basically what we call fonts in our layman languages is actually called typeface. It's a design of letters, a design of characters. So that is what it's called. That is what we call fonts. Then, like the layman call typefaces font. So now, as we know, the font is often used interchangeably with typefaces. However, there's ever so slight difference between them, because font is actually typeface is actually the design of a particular family of text. They have the same design and all of that. Then font is now that family with other features or characters in it. That is, let's say, Times New Roman is actually a typeface. So when we now use or have Times New Roman with different sizes, bold, italic, and all of that, that's when we now call it a font. Okay, change the font does not mean change the typeface. Change the font actually means change the size, the color, the character, as the bold or the regular or the italic of that particular typeface. So typeface and font is the two different in general. So now, particular example which I will do practically is this. Now, if you come here, this particular word typography is a font, and the name of that it's a font, yeah, and the name of this design being used is called typeface. So if we come here, name of this design used here is Times New Roman. As you can see, Times New Roman, that's the name of the typeface. So now, but with this character, the bold and all of that, we're seeing it, this is the font. So that's what it basically means. So the design in general, which is this name, is a typeface Times New Roman. So then that will now take us down to what other terminologies are, which is, so we'll talk about tracking. What is tracking? Tracking is the amount of space between letters in a complete word or sentence. Yeah. So now the spacing is a perfect example of tracking. So now this is a normal tracking space that fits. It enhances readability and legibility in design. It enhances legibility basically in design. So now we can see it can be adjusted, it can be reduced, it can be increased. Tracking is the amount of spaces between. So this is the opposite of it. If we have something as regular as that, we can call this increase and enlarge it. So what I'm trying to do now is I'm tracking this particular text, the spacing between, I'm increasing and enlarging the spacing. So that is the tracking. That is what tracking actually means. The spaces between letters in a complete word or sentence. So now this has a little amount of tracking. This has a little amount of tracking that has been reduced and all of that. So the next to go to is kerning. What is kerning? Kerning describes the act of adjusting the space between character, including those between words, to create A harmonious pairing. So now in this form, I want us not to mix or confuse kerning with tracking. So tracking is is a complete embodiment or the complete way of increasing the spacing between card letters. So now you're doing it in general, in whole, in the whole composition of the particular typeface. So now of the particular font rather. So now kerning is actually the adjustment of these spaces between two letters. Okay, this is a perfect example now. There are some fonts that when you use them, when you use them, the spaces between the letters are not always equal. So you need to come and do it manually, select, increase, reduce, and adjust. It happens basically most times when we work with letters like A and V, they are side by side, stuff like that. Letters that have slant sides and they are kerning for their kerning side by side is different from a regular letter that has a vertical character like M, O, T, H, and co. But for letters that have slant side now, they're trying to adjust the kerning so that it will fit perfectly just like what we have in this category. Then the kerning can also be reduced through the tracking option. So it will have to drop like this means just to fit, like when you get the visual balance, you release it. So this is a perfect example of kerning. So you're trying to make the edge of this V to align with the bottom of this A. So that's a perfect example of kerning. So it's actually an adjustment, or it's used to describe spaces between two letters. While tracking spaces between all the letters in the whole font. So now let's go to leading. So what is leading? Leading describes the vertical spacing between each line of type. So a perfect example of leading is this. A perfect example of leading is follow the guideline. Yes. So leading is a spacing between the bottom of a particular text to the bottom of the other text. That means each line of each text, that's the spacing between. That is what is called leading. So from this particular line to this particular line, that is one leading. So we can adjust leading by changing the options here. It works for every other Adobe software's products. So this is perfect. So you can adjust the leading, can adjust the tracking, can adjust the kerning, just to suit or to make the text look presentable to the eye. So all of these things need to be attended to whenever we are designing. We don't just sit down and use the default most of the time. Most times the default doesn't really give us what we want or makes the design look legible. So for legibility, if you want the perfect legibility, you can compare a text that looks like this, looks too far apart, text that looks too far apart with this particular text. This is more easier to read compared to this. This makes your eyes go far away or travel so long. Or better still, let's use this particular one as an example. We can compare reading this or this or this with each other. So in order to make our text legible, we need to there's reasons for us to adjust distance if we are working with particular typeface that has uninteresting features of all of these characters. So now let's go to baseline. Baseline is actually the line upon which most letters sit and below which descendants, such as the lower loop of a G extend. So I will turn on the grid line to review what baseline means. In the beginning of the tutorial, we talked about setting of baseline. So this is a perfect example of what leading. Yes, leading is every line at the base of a particular group of letters. Every line at the base. So now, how you can know leading is for P now, the bottom of a P is a descender. So that is where a descender starts and go down. And the Q, the same apply to Q. So it goes on, and also G. So leading is the particular line where the letters of a text rest upon. So now and also we will talk about X height. X height is the vertical height of the small letters in a typeface. This is a vertical letter. This is like from this to this is X height of a particular. I will not want to bore so much on all of these properties. So with these few terminologies, which are the major ones, I believe we can navigate more, and also we also can navigate more to achieve legibility in our particular design or typography works. So aside X height, we also have cap line. Cap line is the opposite of X height. X height is for small letter and cap line is for capital letter. So from here to here is cap line, and from here to here is XI. So like I said, I won't like to bore so much on this. So let's go to the classifications of typefaces. We're talking about the classification of typefaces. So I will start with serif. Serif typefaces include a slide projection, finishes on strokes of its letter. So this is actually what serif font means. So the edge of a serif font has strokes of letters, strokes at the edge of its letter, strokes at the edge of the letter. That's how we can identify serif fonts. Those strokes are actually called serifs. So with serif fonts, we can actually understand one path of text, which basically are number one. Let's work with this one and see. One, diagonal stress. So the thinnest part of particular character of a particular letter, the thinnest part of a particular letter is a diagonal stress facing each other. The thinnest part of a particular letter that is facing each other is most times can be found in letters like the O, letters like the E, and all of that, and the D too. As long as they are facing each other diagonally, it's called diagonal stress. And bracket serif, we have bracket serif, which is the number 2. The bracket serif are those serif with curves at their edges. Yeah. With curves at their edges. So we have number 3 talks about minimum contrast. So the minimum contrast is actually talking about the thickness of the one of the character or the thickest side of the letter compared to the thinnest part of the letter. So we've talked about contrast, and we know contrast is just to show differences. So we should know that with that number 3, what contrast actually means. Then number 4, we have wedge shape serif, which will not take much of the time because we still have a lot of classifications to talk about. So 5, angle head serif, and 6, O-style serif generally include Adobe Jersey, Gerardon, Gaudi O styles, and so many more styles of serif that we can find. We have so many more styles of serif. We know that every typeface that has special characters or ornamentations at the edges of their letter are called serif. So this is a perfect example of serif also here. This is a perfect example of serif. We have different serif fonts. We have different serif. I'm trying to pick out a serif font aside what I've used. Try to pick out a serif font. Okay, This is a perfect example now of the serif fonts to include now. That's the Gaudi that we are talking about. So let's move on to the next one, sans serif font. Sans serif fonts are those fonts that does not have the ornamentations at the edge of each of their letters. Let's take it that way, because we can practically say sans serif are the opposite of serif font. So sans serif fonts don't have ornamentations or strokes at their edges, while serif font has strokes at the. That's how we can actually identify serifs and sans serif font. So sans mean no serif, and serif means ornamentations or strokes at the edge of letters. So now, these also have parts of a sans serif font. The number one talks about the small uppercase G to minimal contrast on the strokes. The other one has maximum contrast. That's the serif has maximum contrast on the strokes. So that's one way we can differentiate them. So some of the curves were more squared, and also a double story lowercase G, as we can see on the number 4, and few examples of these are Franklin Gothic, News Gothic. So like my favorite font, my favorite typeface, the Novera and all of that, they are sans serif font. So let's move on to the next one, script font. Script typeface are based on the fluid strokes of handwriting. I can range from formal to very casual. They are suitable for display use. So as you all know, most times script fonts are script typeface. Like as you all know, I've already said we use typefaces and fonts interchangeably, but don't get it confused, because they are actually not the same thing. Typeface is a design, then while font is actually the design with the special characters like the bold and all of that. So now we can call this a font now, but the design is actually that of a script font. So now, we script typeface. So they are suitable for display use. So now, what script typeface are being used for most times is for display, and they are not always much in a particular design. We don't see them in a particular design because of legibility and readability when it comes to design consumption. So we don't see them. Why? Because when they become so much, they become very difficult or very hard to read. So it's just better you make them as less as possible in the design. So we don't keep a lot of script fonts in the design. So what we basically use script font for is most times for headings and not for things that will be legible, not for write-ups that will be legible or that will contain so much detailed information or so much information. So you only use script fonts for heading most times, or you use script fonts to just emphasize something very large, and the characters and the use will not be so much. It can be just one line of a particular design, and it will be for emphasis sake. And also type serif fonts. Serif fonts are categorized or identified as old style or old fashioned typefaces. Why? Because we can see them that they are actually typefaces that were used in most of our novels those days, Macbeth, Romeo and Juliet, and all of that. So they are old fonts. They are the oldest fonts that we can ever see in this category of typefaces. They are the oldest typefaces that we can ever see in this category of typefaces. So most people see them old-fashioned. So every typeface has their meaning, and we can actually associate their history with their meaning. So a perfect example is serif being an old-fashioned typeface. So whenever you're doing a design that looks a design that talks about the past, or a design that talks about old-fashioned or something, we should tend to or welcome or adopt serif typefaces. So because they are old fashioned does not basically mean they are outdated or cannot be used. They are actually outdated fonts. I'm not talking about serif fonts now. We have outdated fonts, which I will get down to that part of discussion. But serif fonts generally are old fashioned, and most times whenever, like just like in colors, every color has their meaning. Serif fonts has a meaning. So every serif, every typeface has a reason they were being produced, has a story behind it most times, because all designs are creative with a particular concept. So, and as we all know that typefaces are designs of text, so we should definitely know that there is a meaning a particular text is communicating. So the meaning can be attached to the history of the typeface, which I just said now that serif fonts, serif typefaces are typefaces that are old fashioned. So which makes them equivalent to something, or typefaces that can be used for official designs, memorandum, and all the rest. Memorandums, whichever designs that talks about formal presentation. So and for sans serif fonts, sans serif fonts, it is sans serif typefaces. Sans serif typefaces are typefaces that are modern. Like I said, they are the opposite of what we have in serif. They are modern, and most times they are being used for headings. They're being used for headings and subheadings, and you can also use them for body copy. Body copy is the content, is the most voluminous content, the voluminous part of a particular design composition, where we have the main information and the paragraphs and every other thing. While headings, we all know, as the name implies, is the top side, or the most, or the side with the emphasis, the section that has the most emphasis. So sans serif are also formal, and they can be at times casual too, but most times they are being used for formal presentations too. They are modern, as we know. Sans serif font too, serif typefaces too can be used as headers. So, and they can also be used as body copy. But I've studied that these days most designers don't really use it for presentations or designs that will be displayed on the screen, because serif fonts being on the screen might be difficult to read at times. They are legible typefaces, but they are difficult to read at times because of the tiny strokes whenever you use them for body copies. So it's advisable we use them most times for print, or leave them as heading part. So whenever they are being printed, they are easy to read compared to leaving it on the screen as body copies. That is a tip that we should just keep in mind, or bear in mind. So now, script typefaces I've explained, they are basically used for display. They should not be so much just a particular emphasis display. And as you know, you cannot have more than one emphasis in the design. Emphasis means most important. So you cannot have two most important in the design. So let's know that. Also, we have, this is a perfect example, and the parts they have floral edges most times, flowing loops and flourishes from one letter forms that are generally connected. That's, as we know, handwritings, families of them are handwritings and scripts, yeah, and all of that. So we also have monospace. Monospace typefaces are non-proportional. Every letter takes up the same amount of horizontal space on the page or screen. Yeah, serif and sans serif. So monospace typefaces are characterized by the same width, the same letter width. Each letter has the same width. Each letter has the same width perfectly. So there is actually an issue here because majority of serif and sans serif fonts are monospaced, but not all. So let's take note of that. Let's take note of that because there are some letters that are not almost the same width because of their scale and all of that. There are some letters that are not almost the same width in serif and sans serif, which you cannot which we cannot associate them with monospace, but majority of sans serif and serif has the same width for each of the letters. So now so this category of typefaces that has the same width for their letters, they are called monospace. So they also take some basic functions of some basic usage of the serif and sans serif. And as we know that sans serif are modern compared to serif typefaces. So and finally we'll talk about display font. I've actually mentioned that um, script typefaces are used for display. We also have a classification of typeface that is also called display typeface. So a display typeface vary widely in their appearance. The appearance is dependent is how would I call it? Is abstract most time. Most times there are some that have specific appearance that we've seen in our everyday life and include both practical and novelty fonts suitable for headings and titles. We have a lot of them as a perfect example, and most of them are outdated. I said I will say one or two things about outdated font. We should learn not to use outdated font or outdated typefaces in designs. It makes our design looks out of looks vague. Make it look out of being in vogue or something. So it's better we try to make research and get to know trending typefaces, update our libraries of typefaces, and make sure after installing you practice and see how best you can use them. And the usage of typefaces also can be channeled through the principles of design, because like I was mentioning in some of the previous videos that okay we can talk about contrasts with typefaces. I was giving instance the shapes, giving instance with typefaces with text and all of that. So all of this contrast, balance and all of that, it is also good to try to relate most of design principles with typefaces. It will help you show how professional, to help you reflect that you know what you're doing. So I'll give some examples of typefaces that are not really interesting, that are old fashioned. Let's see copper black. So this is a display font or display typeface, and it's definitely outdated. Typeface like this being outdated used on design will make your design look, I don't even know the perfect name to associate a design that has this type of type. This typeface has been overused. The problem is they've actually not been so old like serif typeface, but the rate at which it has been used it has made them look outdated. So we should also learn one or two things, that whenever we are trying to design anything, we should try to use typefaces that will look unique, that will look different, different, look very unique, different from what is common. What is common? You can use what is trending, but what is trending might not definitely be what is common. So that's what we should know. Because a particular typeface might be trending, maybe it's being used and it's blending well with work, but with time, over time, it gets outdated because of the overused way. So let's just take note of that. I think we also have another that I can actually display. Let's see, Algerian. Okay, this is also a perfect example. Algerian. This is a perfect example of one of the outdated. So let's just we know everybody almost know that this particular typeface is common. People use it over and over again. So we can also see one again. Let's see, joke man. Yeah, this is also a common one that has been, that has trended and trended and trended and trended, and it has been overused. So let us know that I want us to know that we should do well to make research, check typefaces that are trending, new typefaces that are out that can be used. They are beautiful typefaces, and during the course of during the end of the class, I will also show us or tell us more about how to source out for typefaces and install on our PC and use. So I will try to give some few or some basic guidelines in the usage of typefaces to make them look interesting in our design. So let's get started. So let's create a new. If we're creating a new document, we can. So I'll first make sure. I'll work with the reflection of contrast in typefaces in typography. So first is let's create a particular. So if you have this particular regular font with this word typography, I want to try to call attention to it or something. We can play around with it by giving it importance. So one of the importance we can give it is change the property to something very bold, very bold. So we have to increase this a bit or reduce the size. Let's reduce the size. So it's very bold. So now we can also try to play with it in several ways, which I will make use of one. So I can to call attention when it comes to contrast and try to take off this and make it regular. Let's see, it's not looking very distinctive. So we should know something. This will make us understand that whenever you're even working with a particular typeface, a particular font, and you try to blend contrast together, maybe you increase the boldness of a particular font, so try to take the boldness twice away, not just this as exactly the same. Like this is a perfect example now. We have regular, and the next thing we have semi bold and bold. So if you can get something as thinner, something more thin than this, then let's see. Okay, we have enough bold condensed. So let's try to increase this bold condensed. It's condensed now. Bold condensed will not be nice. Semi-bold. See, bold is the thickest. So let's just change the properties, the complete properties of the font, so that we can get perfect example. I still really don't like the reflection of what we're having, but we can actually adjust that by coming to Novera. Let's use Novera. So just you check the particular typeface that has much of this font properties that you can really play with. So this is a perfect example of what we need. So trying to create a blend of contrast, which we have classic black. As you can see, we have several font categories here. So I can decide to make this. So this is a perfect way of creating contrast. Even if we say this is too thin, we can still bring it or improve the font properties here. Can bring it to regular, which is also good enough, and we can use light. So I think the light is with typography. So this is a perfect way of showing contrast. And take note of something. I want us to understand that in design, opposites attracts a lot. Opposite attracts a lot. So we should know that whenever we make a particular design and we try to use a blend of the opposite of a particular element, we are also making emphasis. We are calling attention to that particular thing. So let's take note of that. So as we know, bold and slim is an opposite. And as we also know that, let's see if this, let's see this, we have serif, we have sans serif here, and let's make this serif. Let's see if we are going to have something something cool, maybe. Okay. So this is also a perfect example. This is also a perfect example of opposite attracts. So the font category is limited. We would have loved to travel or go further. Let's see this. Okay, I think yes. So these are perfect example of opposite attract. So let us try to know opposite attract, not just in typography, even in shapes and all of that. So one of the rules also is whenever we are working with typography, just we should not just make the make use of all the classifications of typefaces that we have. It will make our design look disorganized, to make our design look disordered. So we should make sure to use, is either you stick with a particular typeface and use the blend of its fonts, or you just use, can stick with, since you know opposite attracts, you can stick with the serif and sans serif, or you can even use one, just serif alone. Take note of that. Now, I was saying something about the rule in typography about not trying to use display fonts as a content, as a body copy section of a design. So let's say a body copy is about, fill it in with placeholder text. Now this is a serif font. So we can adjust with same font. Let's give it 12 is okay. Now, so imagine we now try to make a blend here and change all of these to script fonts. It's going to look, let's see this. So now, definitely this will be difficult to read, very difficult to relate with. This is not what we call, this is not legibility. This is not legibility. So let us try to understand that whenever you're working with text or working with typography or typefaces, take note of two key things: legibility and readability. Legibility is the ability to actually read what is in the content of a typeface. Now, this isn't legible enough. So it would have been so nice if it's just a particular line. Imagine you try to read this over and over and over and over and read all of the content. You get tired. Your eyes get get suffered. Let me use that word. Your eyes get stressed. So most times display fonts, script fonts rather, script fonts are best used as emphasis. They are not used as body copies. So let's take note of that. Let's go back to, then we can go back to, and you can see the huge difference between that, the script for body copy, and now we're back to sans serif for body copy. You can see the huge difference. Let's use the regular and drop down the sizes. You can see the difference. It's just so clear. You can increase the tracking. You can increase the tracking here depending on how one is. And so that's one. For real legibility, the text, the typeface needs to be should be readable, should be accessible, and for readability, the way it will be read should be understandable. So that means we should actually not position in such a way that we get it very we make our viewers get confused on where to start this test from and where to end it from. So that means we should part of this aspect of let me reduce this tracking. Part of this will now talk about justification and the alignment of a test. So when we are trying to align a test and we tend to put it or align a test, okay, let's align a test in such a way that it won't be readable, something of this nature. So we definitely find it difficult to read because, as we all know, that the eyes travel from left hand side to right hand side. So in this nature, find it very difficult for it to be to find it difficult for readability to take place here. So it won't be readable in this manner. So if we have an alignment of the left, and we can actually play along with it, and also when it comes to paragraphs, we should know that the first line does not or should not include a paragraph. This is a perfect example now. So in a situation whereby we tend to create first line paragraph in this is actually very wrong for the first line, but it's okay for the second line. But for this first line, it's okay. It's wrong, but for the second line, it's okay. Why is it wrong here? Because the essence of paragraph is to create or to express legibility in terms of where to start from, where it should be read from. This particular section is different from this particular section. That's the essence of paragraph. So now we all know that this section is a new session. So there is no point trying to create a new paragraph here because with just this alone, because there is no text on top of it, the negative space is enough. The negative space here is enough to let us know that this is a new section and this is where to start from. So this particular section now needs it because we know it's adjoining, it continues from a particular previous text content. So this is the way it should actually work. So if you have something of this nature, then this should not have, then this should have. So this is the best way to actually communicate legibility also whenever we are making tests for body copies. So during the course of like I said, during the course of the previous videos, I said a lot of things about principles of typefaces, which we should also take note. take note and implement them in typographies. And also, whenever we're using or working with typography, you should know that the numbers of characters here also matters, because when the length of one line is longer than usual, or the longer than the standard length, the eyes get bored and it's find it very difficult to relate, or find it difficult to read or communicate. So now the length of a particular character should be within the range of 45 to 90. What do I mean by that? That means if I'm actually selecting this, let's go to view and see window info to see the particular. Now, if we check just a line, I will see that the number of character in that line is 70. In a situation whereby we now tend to, this is still okay. Like I said, it should be 45 to 90. So in a situation whereby we now tend to adjust, let's see, and reduce. Let's see how many numbers of characters we have here. Numbers of 45. This is still legible enough. Now this is out of legibility. This is out of legibility. So 35 characters, including the lines. It does not really make sense. It's really not good enough. So we can try to increase and check. 39 is not good enough. It should be 45 to 90. 45 to 90. So this is a perfect one. This is a perfect one. In a situation whereby we find it difficult to keep expanding, we can reduce this text size so as to contain more. Can reduce the text size so as to contain more. So for something of this nature, then we can actually, so about the alignment, we are starting from left to right, and we can make the justification. What the justification does is it makes this text be in a particular column. So something of this nature. So this is a perfect example. But in this manner, we can decide to remove hyphenate or leave hyphenate. We can decide to remove hyphenate or leave hyphenate. So there are still more things that, or more discoveries you find when it comes to the use of typography, because it's very interesting. Thank you for staying to the end of the class.